I just realized like half my face is like dark.
Yeah,
I'm my
yeah.
fault.
For sure,
You
for
good.
sure. You good.
So, because what's the girl named Sunshine? We still got what's his face growth segment.
Sunshine. Oh.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So because that's staying under wraps,
Understood.
we still got
Understood.
we got Carl joint lined up. So just so you know,
Okay. Yeah, nah, we good.
let me make this.
I got you. I appreciate you reminding me. But yeah,
Yeah,
nah, we
man.
good.
Yeah.
Sunshine.
Hey, shout out to her though, man. She definitely, hey, she got a story. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
She gonna tell
like,
it to you as
for
well, but
sure, for sure. She
that's
definitely,
funny.
she definitely gonna make sure you know it. But, bro, I was talking to my girl about it. I'm like, I just can't understand. I'm like, and I joke like, is that a female thing or like what's going on with that? Because I'm like,
Yeah.
man, we couldn't get a word in. I was like, we asked her 2 questions, babe.
And it felt like a really long episode too, but with 2 questions.
Bro, it wasn't even like you seen me. I'm to the growth segment. We here, like, um, yeah, low key. We could technically be like tapping in. Well, it's recording already. I started to get in the habit of just recording. You know what I'm
For
saying? We
sure.
might get something dope, but I'm gonna go on here to the little check-in joint. But damn, I hate that my joint.
Yeah,
my
I've
joint.
been trying to send her for a minute. I ain't gonna
Yeah,
count. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
my joint literally whops at it. Like I literally see my joint.
I definitely see that.
Yeah, that's crazy work. Let me see something. But no,
That's
that's crazy.
crazy. Just angles, 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 angles.
For sure. I'm actually salty that this looks like that. Like, why is it?
Sorry about that, fellas.
Nah, you all good.
You
You
good?
all
You
good.
good?
That's funny. Hold on. Let me see if I can tinker with this real quick.
I don't see it being able to make a huge adjustment, brother.
Nah, you tripping. It ain't gonna look perfect, but I'm gonna make it do
We're
something.
gonna make it shake, yeah.
Yeah, let's zoom it in so you can't really see it. Hold on. Where we at? Hood. Yeah, yeah. You know what I'm saying? Just zoom it in real quick.
Oh man.
Yeah, yeah, we good. We good. All right. So yeah, you can go ahead and mute, brother. We're gonna get right into it. So man, Marcus family, how you doing today?
Man, I'm swell. I'm swell. Another beautiful day. Glad to be here, be present, man. And always a good time to chat with my brother, man. What's new with you?
Man, I just got on this new like well-being committee at my gig, bro. And
Okay.
it's an exciting time because it's an opportunity to really make some change. Because at first I was thinking like, oh man, they just want me to do some restorative justice work. That's why they want my insight. But today, bro, we actually was looking at this employee satisfaction survey, and what was dope was we were planning stuff based off of data. And I was like, man, it wasn't some stuff where like, oh, we feel people think that. No, like we literally pulled data. We were looking at the score of the overall satisfaction, bro, and it was just dope because I'm like, I've never been in a space where it was like I literally saw how the data could play right into how we can make an impact immediately. So that was
Mm.
powerful. But other than that, man, life is good. You already know it.
Yeah, yeah. Nah, I love to hear it. I'm knowing that's beautiful. That actually ties into a strategy meeting we had today, which was very, very high level, man. And it was just dope to see the collective team to the point where I was able to even just sit back and bite my tongue. I ain't really need. It's amazing to be the executive director, the founder of something, but see other people so passionate about elevating the collective organization, man. So just a beautiful kind of aha, sigh of relief. You know what I'm saying? Type we're in good hands for the next generation or two. So
For sure, man. I love to hear that. But man, the quote I got for today, man, it's a quote from Dr. Cornell West, and the quote is, "Justice is what love looks like in public." What you think about that, Marcus?
it's righteous. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Somebody
yeah.
who's faithful, who is committed, they gonna stand 10 toes down regardless, right? Of who's in front. They're not gonna maneuver, they're not gonna adjust. It's gonna be consistent across the board. and justice is righteous. It's nothing to hide, right? It's nothing to try to taint, as we see a lot of times in the system. That is beautiful, right? That's that old couple holding hands for years upon years, and it being as it should.
Yeah.
I like that quote. What's your thoughts there?
Man, you took the words right out of my mouth, but just being funny because I think of like the public display of affection a lot of times, and most men don't like that in a sense, but it's true, bro.
Yeah.
The quote is true. It's justice is what love looks like in public. If it's not true justice, I'm gonna switch up depending on who I'm with. I'm gonna switch up depending on who's listening. I'm gonna switch up depending if cameras is on. But if I love you and I care about you, I don't care who's looking. I'm gonna love you out loud. So I love this quote. I think it's real. I think it's real.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. But I'm excited to get our guest perspective on it. Mr. Christian, would you hop on for me, brother?
What's going on, fellas? Appreciate you having me on.
For sure, man. Would you mind, James? Would you mind giving them the quote one more time? We would love your perspective on it.
Man, I'm pretty sure Christian is very familiar with the quote.
Yeah.
Right, like I was over here cracking up. I was like, "Ain't no way, man! That's wild."
Yeah. But man, speak on it, brother. What's your perspective on the quote?
Man, it's a quote that is very deep for me. Because although it's not a scripture, I look at life, the way that I live my life is through biblical principles. And so all throughout scripture, you see that love isn't just, it's an action word, right? So it's not just something that you feel or a strong affection for somebody, but it's what you do. And oftentimes it's making sure you do the right thing by that person. And that resonates with me, right? On a spiritual level, and then even on a socioeconomic, political level. And then even just in a family sense, having seen a lot in my life and some wonderful things and some not so wonderful things. I've seen how the power of justice and restitution and reconciliation and what that does for relationships and then even what it can do on national levels.
Nah, that's dope. That's dope, man. Well, Christian, I know you. I know James and I have chopped it up a little bit about you, man. Would you mind giving us a little bit of insight who Christian Mosley is?
Yeah, man, I'm not gonna lie. I hate this question, but it's crazy. So I've been working on this.
Yeah.
But so yeah, man, I'm Christian Mosley. I am a Fayetteville native. I wasn't born here, but I was raised here. Been here since 2004. And man, I'm a husband to a beautiful, brilliant woman. I'm a soon-to-be father of two. So I got my 2.5-year-old son. He'll be 3 here in a little bit, and then we welcoming a baby girl here in September as well. So we definitely we got a lot going on, man. So between that and just taking care of everything, I'm a territory manager for a large retailer. Work with a lot of contractors around the construction industry a lot, and then outside of that, I'm also a community advocate and a podcast host. My show's called Berean Talk. I talk a lot about biblical and political matters from my unique perspective that I have. I don't necessarily have like a degree or formal education in those things. I have observations, I have thoughts, and sometimes I say something that's mildly profound.
I think, man. Hey, baby girl, about to change your life. I'm excited for you, man.
Facts.
She's gonna open up your eyes to a whole lot, man. But one thing I know and I've taken note of, man, is you have an old soul about you. I'm curious to know, like, where did that come from, man? What inspired you to really have that element about yourself?
It's crazy you mentioned that. So one of the things that's highly unique about me is that I was a homeschool student. So the first time I ever went to a school, I call myself an OG homeschooler, which is the first time I ever went to a school was my freshman year in college. So I ain't never seen it inside of a daycare or nothing like that until I got to college, and I was 16. So that was like right when I graduated high school, dual enrolled. And
wait, hold on. You went to college at 16?
Yeah,
okay. I had to slow that down, make sure everybody heard that right.
The dual enrollment was the gym. Like if that piece was the gym.
Yeah, man. It was yeah, it was just something. It was just I was at that stage in life. One of the beautiful things about being homeschooled is like everybody has different styles of doing it, but the way that my mom did it was according to the pace me and my brother were just getting work done and able to excel. So by the time I was going to college, I was ready for the academic work, but the social life was a culture shock. So getting
Yeah.
used to that, but I'm still living at home. Got my own car, making my own friends. But my parents at that point had raised me to have my own convictions, so they weren't really as strict as most people would have thought.
Yeah.
Never had like curfews and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as the old soul, I spent most of my time with my parents. So between that, I read a lot. And my mom had me reading everything from like the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books when those was dropping
Yeah.
to I was reading Cornell West at 13. I was
I can
reading the
believe
Uncle
that.
Tom's Cabin and all that.
Mm.
So I had had my mind expanded with a lot of types of literature between that and like the autobiography of Martin Luther and learn about the church fathers and so like it was a range of information I always had access to, and because we were raised in an environment where learning was encouraged in whatever direction.
Yeah.
I just free grazing all the time, and with that, and spend time with my parents. My pops is from Oakland, California, and my mama is from DC.
Okay.
So that made for a hell of a personality between me and my brother, being raised in the South. So yeah, it was a lot going on. So that's mostly what it is. Most of my friends I've always made friends with. Everybody's always been much older than me. Those are people I click with. Even the people I work with, most of them, I got coworkers that's like my parents' age, and we
Yeah.
like those people I'm just cool with for whatever reason. It's just been
Yeah.
like that my
Yeah.
whole life, and
Yeah.
my wife is exactly the same way.
Yeah, man. I think it's funny. I know a couple triplets that were homeschooled, and I talk about them to Marcus all the time. I'm like, they're just extremely brilliant, and I think it's exactly what you said. You were in a space where learning was encouraged, and then you were able to go at a pace that you're comfortable with. So if you're advancing rapidly, all right, let's get you to the next level. Like you don't have to wait a whole school year just to start tapping into a new curriculum. So I think that's dope.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
me and Marcus talked offline about the triplets, and I was telling them, I'm like, they're super brilliant, but there are certain social cues that they miss because, like you said, the first time that they went into, I ain't gonna say a social setting because they're 13 and 14. So actually, just to kind of humble brag on one of my mentees, he's 13 about to go to Elmhurst College. So when he was saying 16, I
Wow.
was like,
Mm.
yeah. So
Wow.
he'll be 14 in I think like 2 months. So he'll be like starting his freshman semester as a 14-year-old. But I'm telling
Woo.
them, yeah, it's like smart guy. You know what I'm saying? It's literally smart guy
Right,
in real
right,
life. But
right.
but it's one thing that because he grew up in a household, he's a bit. How can I say this? Like he's super confident, like because he knows a lot of information. So sometimes like he'll be talking to someone, even adults, and it comes off a little weird, right? Like he may say something
Hmm.
that even is borderline disrespectful, and I'm setting this up this way because I'm interested in knowing. You said when you got to college, it was a culture shock. Like, what were some of the things that you had to learn being a homeschool kid, now being in an environment where majority of the kids around you, they've been to social, been to home, private or public schools. They've been around their friends all the time. They've hung out. They've done these things. Like talk about that.
So it's interesting. So it's not really even the culture shock that you would think. So like
Mm-hmm.
I actually grew up being very social. I grew up with around like a smaller homeschool community,
Gotcha.
which is mostly very very white, very right wing conservative.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is crazy because like a lot of my education was like almost like that spook who sat by the door experience. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot about that
Mm.
side that I understand. And some of them I'm good friends with. Some of them not so much. But I think to to what to to what you're asking, or to your point. Hold on, I start rambling for a second. Can you repeat the question one more time?
So basically, I was equating my young man that I know, like he can have this like bravado about him because again he knows a lot
Right.
of information, like just like you said, like knowledge was encouraged, right? So he's in the books, and we'll be going over something, and I'll say, "Oh no, the answer to that is 49 or something." He'll be like, "No, it's this, and you should know that by now," or
Yeah.
some stuff,
Yeah.
some stuff like that. And I'm just like, dang, like, I'm cool with it. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna teach him, but I'm
Hmm.
like, if he was in a different environment, somebody might put their hands on him because of how he approaches that. So I was just,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I think with that, and even being at college, what was weird was because the way that my especially my mom specifically, because of her
mm-hmm.
background and how she was, we were around a lot of, I wouldn't say like abnormal things in terms of bad, but just abnormal things in terms of like you don't really have kids around that stuff a lot. So
Yeah,
like one of the things was like my parents were real estate investors, and so part of like our schooling was to like I would go out with them to a job site or to the closing of a property at the bank or whatever. So there was all types of people I was
yeah,
always meeting and interacting with. Some of my peers, I played sports, shout out to College Lakes, up until I got into like middle school. And then even after that, when me and my brother were 15, 14, we started a business. So we did that for like 2 years and had all types of clients, dealt with all types of people. So being around folks wasn't the weird part. It was more so I've never been around that many people at once with such a, almost like, not everybody, because I don't want to be like insulting or anything, but it's almost like everybody had almost this like cookie cutter type mindset
yeah,
about ways that they looked at life. Everybody's unique and an individual, but it was one of those things that was very weird to me, the way that people, dealt with certain things. And then it was like also too, depending on who you were around, it was like the maturity differences, because it was like you're dealing with some folks that it's like it's the 13th grade, and then you got other folks that's like, yeah, one of my homies is almost the same age as me or a couple years older than me. My other homie is a retired special forces vet that came back to get his GC license, and I'm hanging out with both of these dudes at the
yeah,
same time. So even being around that was like a culture shock, because that's not even really like the university experience at first.
yeah,
Um, and then I did spend like a couple months at a university overseas for a little bit. That was a whole nother experience. So I think to your point about the socialization part, I think part of what this is what irritates me about homeschoolers sometimes is that they'll know a whole lot, and like you said, you don't pick up on the social cues, and you feel uncomfortable sometimes not being the smartest person in the room. And like there are times we're very easy to pick out sometimes,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, yeah,
But it's not always a bad thing, not always a good thing. But I think because of the unique way that I was raised in some cases, like sometimes I have my little quirks,
yeah,
but oftentimes people don't know because I've had to be around so many different types of people most of my life. So I'm not gonna change who I am, but
yeah,
I know how to relate.
yeah, yeah. I honestly think homeschooling should be like I personally think more people should do it. I think that's the best way that I can
100%.
say it because there's a lot of information out in the world that I feel as though our kids don't need to have access to this early. I said something to my girl and she kind of agreed, but she was like, I don't know. I was like, it's ridiculous to me that kids can have cell phones at 6 and 7 years old. Like if it's a government phone, all you can do is call me. Like cool, but like having access to get on Instagram or look on TikTok or be on YouTube and all that stuff, I feel as though it advances their maturity level a little too fast. Like I hear what you're saying, and like you were able to learn knowledge, like get real information, right?
Yep.
I literally was talking to one of the young bucks, and they were telling me about Cassinet and how he had this like super dope pool party in his backyard, and all the baddies was there and all this other stuff. And I'm like, that's dope. I'm like, but like you got to understand what he did to get there. He was like, nah, bro, that's me next year, like whatever. And I'm just like, it could be like I don't want to crush your dreams, but I'm like the pace that you working at, it's not gonna happen. Like, you know what I'm saying? And it's like I feel like I'm not, and let's grow together family. I'm not saying this in a way to like crush people's dreams, but what I'm saying is access too early can be detrimental to someone's development because you have this unreal expectation of like what life is supposed to be like. And the second that life isn't like that, when adversity hits, people crumble. So I just want to clarify that. Like I'm not picking on people. I'm just saying that if you get access too early, it can be bad. But Marcus, I know
Mhm.
you had something to say.
Yeah. Not speaking to that. It sounds like, kind of hearing your story as well. You had access, but you had access in a different form, right? You had access in the individuals who were beyond supportive. You had access in the form of these individuals were performing to a great standard. So you had a great, example to be able to follow. Um, I'm curious to know, what was one of the biggest things that stood out from you, maybe when you were a little bit younger as well, too, with yourself that was homeschooled, and then some of those young men and women that were going to like the public schools. I'm pretty sure you were still engaging with them as well too. Did you find yourself being able to be sociable with them early on, or how were you able to maneuver that as well?
Yeah, I think that was probably the easy part, but it was more so it was the disappointment I had because and I didn't realize this until I got older that mentally I had matured a lot more than I thought I did. So there was almost sometimes like a disappointment when I would get around folks, and it was like you have this mindset as if we're not either about to be legal adults or already legal adults, and we got some bit of responsibility. So it was even having to understand, even for me, like, hey, there's times I got to pull back and like get my homework done, and I got work in the morning, and then at that point too, my family, we had like a small farm, so we had like 7 goats and like 100 and something odd chickens, and then it was another couple dozen type of birds and 2 dogs. So I'm doing like real farm work in the morning, going to work, taking care of stuff in school, and unfortunately, it was dudes I was want to kick it with, and it's like you just want to smoke all day. Like I don't know how you have time for that.
Yeah.
Like you 26, bro. Like I don't know how you have time for that. So
Mm.
that was one of the things that was like it wasn't hard for me to make friends, but it was hard for me sometimes. I think in choosing the right influences sometimes, because I got along so well with everybody. One of the things I had to learn was just how to like have certain boundaries. Like, hey, you know what? Like, nah, because I never had that much access to that many people at once, all the time,
Yeah.
and there's no restrictions. Like, all my parents need to know is that I'm safe. At that time, because I'm living with them. So, like, they like, listen, you can be out at 11:30 if you want to. Just don't get locked up. Don't do
Yeah.
nothing stupid. Act like you got some sense and just get home safely. So that was most more so what it was for me. But it was more so just like making the right choices after it's like all the reins have been taken off. So I'm
Yeah.
like almost an adult.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. It sounds like working with your parents and then being homeschooled, they just really helped to empower like discernment as well too. Like you knew
Yeah,
how to maneuver, you knew how to adjust, and that came in the form of maturity. I heard you kind of talk about coming to college and looking around like what y'all got going on. I had
yeah,
a very
yeah.
similar
Facts.
experience as well, but it was because I lived a whole lot faster, a whole lot younger. All the things that individuals were doing in college, I felt I had already done in high school. So again, there was that sense of maturity that came in play there, where I knew that my priorities at that point in time wasn't, shenanigans and all that thing that came with it
Right,
as well too.
right.
But I it also, as you talked a little bit about your parents, they really seem to inspire you with your podcast, right? As Berean Talk is something that you really lock in on, the politics, the deep dives, things of that nature. I would love to hear, because I heard a quick snippet of you back in high school when you were doing
Wow.
this as well too. And it was just dope to see the evolution as well, but you're still doing the work and having the same conversations. So I want to hear a little bit about how the podcast has evolved throughout that time as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so for those that don't know, so I started a podcast when I was 16, so back in 2016. And initially, it was at that time. I'm a young, Christ following believer. There were ways that I was looking at the word and the world, and oftentimes at my age, I was told like, "Oh, that was some good stuff or whatever." And I had a gift for speaking and communicating. And actually, what's crazy is most people don't know the podcast started as a book. So I started to write the first chapter. I probably got like halfway, and then realized there's no way I'm gonna be able to finish this and it's gonna be good at 16. Scrap it. I like talking. So I told my brother, hey, I'm gonna start a podcast. And I want to be in a way almost what I wish I had, because I was the oldest brother between in my household. So it was me and my younger brother. And I never had like older brothers that I like looked up to or could like hold my hand and help me through life. I had my pops, but it's a little bit different when you have somebody
Yeah.
that's more like a peer type, mentor. And so I was like, well, maybe I should just become the thing that I always wanted to see. So I started that way, and most of my stuff was just, as you could tell, the topics is like, yeah, stuff a 16-year-old might talk about. so, but still, sharing the knowledge that I had. And at the time, I had folks like in the church that we were at, super encouraging, wanted me to do more. Folks in my family were starting to support, and it wasn't huge, but it was something that I definitely felt like God was leading me to do, because I felt that it would be very edifying for the body, edifying for other believers. And as I got older, and got more mature and got more wisdom, learning how to communicate things a little bit better, but also to think a lot more deeply about certain things and about what matters. Thinking about, all right, what's God concerned about in this particular scenario? Like, I know what everybody else is saying, but let me communicate, what that says and what my understanding is, and trying to make that in as much of alignment with what God wants than myself. And that's changed over the years. There's videos I look at now, that I did when I was like 16, 17, and I'm like, I would cut out about half that video, big dog. Like, I was cool, but I don't know if I say that now. But I like it. I actually am, I made another channel, so I'm gonna be moving all the footage, but I keep it because it shows, like you said, it shows the evolution. So like even the stuff that I'm dropping now, it's like, nah, this dude like really had a growing process. And I want everybody, and now even having kids, like I want y'all to be able to look at that and see like, no, you can grow. Like, don't think that this was an overnight process. Like, you talking about now having done the show for like almost 10 years. And not consistently all the time, but checking in and when I had things going on in life, I stepped back. But yeah, that's one of the things that contributed to it, is just going through life, gaining more humility and realizing like, bro, you don't know everything. Pick up a book, man.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most humbling things, man. But like, to it's funny. I see a similarity because I was like, I started writing a book myself, and I'm like, dang, like it'd be much easier if I just could talk about it. And so like my first podcast was literally part of like, it's funny, but like it ain't exactly the same, but I see the similarities. But I'm interested in knowing, like, I hear you saying you wanted a mentor that was a little bit older than you. We like to say close enough to relate but far enough ahead to inspire. But I'm interested in knowing like why this particular topic, like why choose to reference certain pieces of the Bible, and then also to talk about politics, because those are typically two things that people try to stay away from, especially combine, you know what I'm saying, with them together. So I'm interested in knowing like what made you choose that.
So it's crazy. I just had somebody asking me that recently. I think it was one of my cousins, and it's interesting because initially I wasn't as vocal, especially about politics. I didn't really start getting vocal about this type of stuff until between like 18 and 20. I had been learning a lot throughout my childhood. Like my dad, my pops is funny. So my dad had me and my brother watch Roots when we were like 6 and 5, right? So when you talk about you talk about being radicalized, right? So, you don't look at life the same. You watch a man get his name changed against his will, his family snatched. Like I was like, oh, I'm willing to die for this. I'm like 7, like this, right? So when I was having those things happen, one of the biggest things I had growing up was that the Bible is going to be our final standard for living and governing anything, whether it's our lives or whether we're going to look at politics a certain way. And my mom, being somebody that grew up in DC and frequented, while she was in school, she went to Howard and graduated there. One of the things that she was always interested in was the government and law and politics. So she would like go and have lunch, but like at the Library of Congress, or she would go to, the Supreme Court and had family that was all in law enforcement and military. Like I come from a really big military family. But her having access to Capitol Hill and having internships with politicians, and like she like carried like the U.S. Constitution in her purse. Like she was on that type of time. And so for me, one of the things was being more biblically based was probably a much bigger thing for me when I was younger. You could even see it in my episodes that I was doing. And then I remember, I'll never forget it. It was a guy that I wanted to talk to and kind of be mentored by. I was a big, kind of like messianic Jewish teacher. And I had the opportunity to talk to him. And one of the first things he tells me to study, interestingly enough, he's like, I want you to look up in the Bible how many times righteousness and justice is talked about? And I was like, that's an oddly specific thing to ask me to do, but okay, cool. And he said, start at Genesis and then just work your way out. So I started Genesis, and I keep seeing this term reoccurring: righteousness and justice, righteousness and justice, justice, oppression, justice, oppression. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, not even in Exodus yet. And I'm like, this is wild. So then I Google, and I'm like finding out how many times it's in there. It's like justice is one of the few things in the Bible that is talked about more than the word love. So when you understand the emphasis that God puts on this thing, then what started happening when you get into the political part and putting those two things together is that as I'm looking at what the Bible says about oppression, what it looks like when people are oppressed, these are the symptoms of people that are oppressed. I kept looking at that, and then I looked at my community, and then I looked at that, and I looked at my family, and then I looked at that, and I looked at me, and then I looked at that, and looked at the nation, and I'm like, you know, I'm not a political scientist or nothing like that, but I think God cares about this. And one of the things that I kept hearing oftentimes is that people talk about, whatever you want to call it, Christianity or being a believer, however you want to call it. Oh, that's the white man's religion. That's this thing. That's that thing. And oftentimes we talk about the horrific things, right, that we've experienced as a people here in this country. And one thing I've come to understand is like, it wasn't that God wasn't there. And it's not that he doesn't feel a certain type of way about it. He's raised up people to fight against it for years. Oftentimes the government knocks him off. Oftentimes, there's a lot of different things that happen, but he's always in a way like raised prophets to speak out for the oppressed, the poor, and those that need that protection. So as I matured, I was like, those two things actually go together perfectly. And what I kept seeing was there was too many people in the Bible space that weren't having the right view on politics, because they were kind of weaponizing it for their own agendas. And then there was way too much darkness in the political space where it was either like there are a bunch of other types of spirituality that may not even be necessarily beneficial to us as a people. We kind of just latched on to a lot of different things, or it was like completely detached and just completely something else that wasn't beneficial at all, but completely detached from us as being spiritual beings. And I was like, well, what's happening here? And 2020 popped off, protests, and everybody was outside. I'm outside, and one of the things people kept asking me was like, well, so why are you here? And I'm like, well, the Bible says I should be concerned about this, this, and this. That's why I'm out here. And they would say, well, my pastor's not out here. My youth pastor's not out here. My so-and-so's not out here. So what should I think about them? And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just saying this is what the word says. Just why I'm here. And it kind of just kept going from there.
That's real good. Real quick, Marcus, I just had a real quick comment. I was telling my girl, because we were doing Bible study the other day, and I was like, the more that I sit here and I read, I just realize how distracted we have become. Like, I think that's what the problem is. If I could, like, when I think about justice, I think about righteousness, I think about love. Like, those are very simple things. Like, honestly, like, if you really think about it, those are very simple things. And I think, we could talk about technology, we could talk about the tariffs, we could talk about all this other stuff. It's just distracting us from what's truly important. So I just wanted to make sure I just emphasize that. Yeah, but you got it, Marcus.
No, that was spot on. I like how you addressed it, because I think a lot of people kind of tiptoe those topics, and you didn't do that, but you were still able to connect both. Because to your point, I think both of them oftentimes are pointing fingers at each other, and that's when we aren't able to make progress. Kind of to James' point, where it's really kind of just being stuck and stagnant. So really like that, man. But I think that also goes hand in hand. I hear you advocate a lot for ADOS, man. And I know a lot of people like myself are probably like, what is that? right? And maybe not naive to that. But that goes hand in hand with how you were talking about reviewing the Bible and seeing that you saw what's within that. So I'm curious to get a little bit more insight within that. And then why is it so vital to continue the conversation now more than ever?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So ADOS, for those that don't know, it's an acronym coined by Miss Yvette Carnell and attorney Antonio Moore. So they're the co-founders of a movement. You probably, for those that might have heard about it, the ADOS movement. But it's an acronym for American Descendants of Slavery. because one of the things that they were able to do was to really define what it meant to be a Black American in America, and that a lot of the ails that we face, a lot of the things that we, the generational curses that a lot of us, especially as younger men, this generation, a lot of us are being very intentional about doing that. And one of the things that we have to constantly deal with are the consequences of what it meant to be slaves in America. Because you're talking about, 250 years of chattel slavery. And then you have, decades after of neo-slavery, and then apartheid, and then terrorism, and then housing discrimination, and all these other things. And so the reason we advocate for that is because oftentimes we feel like just because you're brown, you had the exact same experience in this nation, and that's not often the case. So, and that's not to say that, folks in the diaspora don't also deal with things as well, but in the context of the United States, we're the only group of people that did not, number one, we never voluntarily came here, so we're not even immigrants. We were cargo. And then the second thing is that we're the only group of people that were brought here and our lives didn't get better. So everybody else within a couple of generations, we've seen, like the Italian immigrants, they come here, a couple generations, they were able to get a United States president. We have, folks that come from the islands in Nigeria, and places like, Sierra Leone and all these other African countries, and they'll come here. And because of course, originally we came from that continent, a lot of us, we look the same, but the things that we carry in our DNA, the traumas, the debts that we carry from generation to generation, a lot of them don't have a point of reference for that, especially for a lot of folks that came post the civil rights movement. You're talking about many folks are coming in to eat off of a plate that my grandparents, our grandparents and great grandparents, they got their skulls cracked open just to get to the table. And oftentimes when you think about that, there's folks that come here that don't have that context historically, and we get stepped on. A lot of times we get disrespected in a lot of ways, and belittled and dehumanized. And so one of the things that, as far as the advocacy part is because we advocate for reparations, right? Reparations for slavery, reparations for Jim Crow. And not just because, it's a good thing to do because some bad things happen to us. It's a debt, right? It's a debt that's owed to us. It's not a nicety. It's not something we're asking for because, like I said, something inconvenient happened. It's because we built the richest nation in the world and we have nothing. And the little bit that we were able to build, when you talk about the Reconstruction era and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Wilmington, and a lot of these other places, Southern Pines, even at one point, a lot of these places were burned to the ground, snatched from us. There's a community right now in Georgia, Sparta, Georgia. They're fighting to protect their 600 acres of land being taken by a railroad company through eminent domain. So this is an active thing that we're constantly going through. And we have economists and experts that have estimated by 2053, the median, the median Black household in the United States, their wealth will be zero. That'll be the median. And this is because of a rapid decline in the wealth that is being taken from us. The little bit that we do have is hard to maintain. So things like real estate, in the last 2 years, we've lost $380 billion with a B in real estate. We didn't hear anything about it. We're seeing a lot about Diddy. We're seeing a lot about these other things that, like like my brother said, that we're very distracted right now. And things like that, we don't understand, and not just understand, but we're not paying attention to. But oftentimes we look around in our families, in our communities, and we're seeing the consequences of it. And oftentimes it's because the inheritance that we were supposed to have gotten, we didn't get it because part of it, our people weren't even considered human beings. Then the next part, we weren't even full citizens. Then the next part, there was other discrimination that had to get dealt with. Then the next part, now there's crack in our neighborhoods. So now we got to deal with that. And then the next part is mass incarceration. So there's a lot that kept happening that has never been rectified. And I believe this is something I believe wholeheartedly. The fact that we're still here is a testament to how strong we are as a people. There's really no other people. I don't even really know if on the face of the planet, let alone in this nation, that has been through all the things that we've been through intentionally to exterminate us and everything else. And we are still here, and the world takes their marching orders from us when they want to look at how to fight injustice.
You said a lot, man. You said a lot. Not in a good way, but it's like I can see why, because it was a term in here. I don't know if you actually said it, but it's economic genocide, right? I don't know if you
Yes.
used it
Yep.
today, but I would love for you to kind of give our listeners a real life example of what this concept is,
Yep.
just so that they can kind of make it more tangible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think so. So one, I love that you were talking about that you were doing, talking about data, and that's one of the things that we specialize in with the ADOS Advocacy Foundation is the actual grassroots organization that's doing a lot of the work for this. So between we have folks that are on the policy team that are actually writing policy. We actually have a comprehensive, it's like a 40-page Black agenda dealing with everything from housing to agriculture, mass incarceration, even cannabis at one point too, because of the way that the laws have changed around the country. And so to help folks understand that, and this is what I feel like is the burden for me, because being young, a lot of us we hear these numbers because $1 billion, if we're being honest, that doesn't sound real. That's not a real number. Any
Mm-hmm.
one of us have like seen in real life. We hear about it. We hear
Yeah.
such and such billion, so and so's a billionaire. Some of us don't really understand what millions even looks like, just because of especially the communities that we come from. That's not a regular thing that you encounter. Because of I have the unique opportunity to grow up very close to some well off white folks, and it doesn't always look, the wealth that they have access to doesn't look the same, right? So a perfect example, one I always give folks, is that my family didn't necessarily weren't in a position to give me an inheritance, starting out life. Just is what it is. When one of my white friends is able to graduate high school, and just graduate. We're not talking about crazy honors. We're not talking about they're doing that and got some crazy scholarships at some universities. Just graduate, right? Grandparents, not their parents, grandparents, $30,000 car, right? I'm gonna go to
Mm.
sleep at night, right? When he's ready to get married, he finds out that when he was born, his grandparents bought a $10,000 diamond ring that was going to appreciate in value so that he could propose to his wife with it. They did this when he was born. Our families can't even afford to think like that. It's not that
Yeah.
we don't want to, right? We have so many seminars and books and different things about how to build a truck. I mean, we see it on our Instagram feeds all the time, how to invest in the stock market, how to do this, how to do that. But when you look at the Federal Reserve data, and this is the part that people don't understand, and also to make it real for us, is that white America right now has, and is climbing, but as of right now, they have about $134 trillion with a T. $134 trillion with a T in wealth for all 20 plus million white families. All of the Black families, and this is when we get into like disaggregation. All of the Black families in the United States, we have a total of 5.75 trillion. This time last year, it was about 6.2. So it's rapidly declining. And what that looks like is that a lot of us are growing up in a society where you're working 40 hours. Then after you get off that 40 hours, now you got to go Uber. It looks like when certain things need to be taken care of, when your tires go out on your car, you have to get caught up in a predatory loan to get some quick cash so you can go pay that off because you got to still get to work, right? It
Mm-hmm.
looks like you're on the verge of getting kicked out and you can't call your grandma, your auntie, your uncle, hey, I need to borrow about $2,000. That's often what it looks like. Now we don't understand that oftentimes because we don't know how white folks are living. And I don't say that necessarily to demonize them, but we don't know what it's like to really live like Americans. So a lot of us are experiencing these things, and some of us have been taught that it's normal, especially like the get it out the mud culture and the do for self culture, and we don't often understand sometimes the capital it takes to really be an American.
Yeah.
Um, and we have oftentimes this decadent veil of celebrity where we'll see, like, there's a reason you're going to see LeBron James every day. There's a reason you're going to see Stephen A. Smith and a lot of these guys every other day. They represent the top 5% of Black families in the United States. The bottom 50% of Black families are worth less than $1, and that's assets to liabilities, right? When a lot of us don't understand that, we look at ourselves or look at our families when we're in situations where we're poor, and we think something's wrong with us, and we don't know that this was done to us, and that it's getting worse, and it's on purpose, and there's no amount of LLCs you're going to be able to open to fix this. Labor is out the window. We're in the age of AI. We're in the age of investments. We're in the age of, one of the greatest wealth transfers in the history of the United States. We're going to have like $68 trillion go from boomers down to Gen X and millennials, and even some Gen Z. So that looks like when you want to buy a house as a young man that, you did all the right things, right? You graduated college, you got honors, you did an internship, you're making $120,000 a year, or something nice. But you have to compete with somebody that's also making the same income, but they can make a cell phone call and there's $40,000 at their disposal, and you're in a bidding war with that. We think that the lemonade stand is going to be able to compete with Minute Maid. Minute Maid has school contracts. Minute Maid has military contracts. You have your neighborhood, and not even your neighborhood. You got your street. It's not the same. And we're not even able to compete with that. And so oftentimes, this is what I tell people all the time now. The reason we don't have segregation is because the dollar sign is the new whites only sign. The dollar sign is the new color only sign. And so I don't have to tell you that Negroes aren't able to come in here. I know most of y'all don't have anything. I'm going to just make it this much money. If a couple of well-to-do get in, I'm not tripping too much, and I'll probably give them a hard time anyway. If a few poor white folks don't get in, cool. Most of them are fine. And we don't realize what fine looks like. We don't realize that the low-end white families are worth $100, $110, $150,000 net worth, including, equity in the house and diversified portfolios and all that good stuff. And a lot of us don't understand that looks like you're not going to really have a future the way that we think we are. So college and things like that are going out the window. Like in the last 5 years, the price of cars has been insane in just the last 5 years. So it's like, I remember you could go and find a used car, a decent one, 5,000, and it would be decent. Now you can't spend less than 10. That's impossible.
That's real. Hold on,
he's on fire.
I meant to hit that a couple times.
You feel me?
I was like, man, like that's a lot to unpack, man. It's a lot to unpack, but it's real. Like, it's real. But like, I got two questions, right? So once you find out, like once you become aware, right? Because sometimes I can't even lie. Like I can't fault someone for not being aware that this is happening to them. Right, it's just kind of like you playing a game that you playing a hand that was dealt, right? But like once you become the person with the cards and can deal a little bit, right? Like what is a person to do? That's the first question. And then my second question is, like, you seem to be so convicted in like your stance in this thing, right? And I'm interested in knowing, like, you're aware of all the distractions. You know all the stuff that's going on. You know the good, the bad, the indifferent. So, like, what is something that has kept you grounded as you pursue your message and, like, trying to help influence more people?
Yeah, absolutely. I got the second question. Well, repeat that first part.
I did that to you.
No, you good.
You done made me forget the question. Marcus, what was the question?
I was getting ready, but I was excited for the answer, so I ain't gonna stand out of that.
All right, we can cut that. But let's focus on the just the second question.
Yeah. So in terms of okay, I think I remember now. I think you were asking in terms of like once you get that information, what do you do with it?
Yes, that's what I was saying. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the scary part, right? Is first you got to even take some time to really digest what's happening and what happened. A lot of us, unfortunately, and even for me too, even being well studied growing up, there were things I even started learning in my later teens and in my early 20s just from reading certain books, reading articles, watching certain documentaries that I didn't necessarily learn when I was younger. Part of that is like it takes some time to really understand how dire our situation is. Now, oftentimes we can just look at our communities and we can see, right? You can look at certain parts of I live in Fayetteville, so like you can look at certain parts of the Ville and you don't it don't take you to be a genius to be like, oh, we jacked up like as a people. Like you go to any predominantly black community, like almost anywhere USA, and what it's not what it's supposed to look like, but what it oftentimes looks like.
Yeah.
And it takes some time to take in the information. A lot of us don't even understand really like what happened during slavery, what that produced. Because like movies don't always do it justice. Like when you understand things like they used to have slave depots, right? A lot of people don't know what that means. It means like imagine your local Lowe's or Home Depot, but there are no tools. It's just us. It's us on shelves. It's us on the blocks. It's us in sales and things like that. When you understand that our bodies were an economic engine, like by the height of 1860, we were the top commodity, including the railroads, agriculture, and any other industries combined, right? So when you understand that, then you start to look at yourself differently because like it's cool to learn about Africa and all that. A lot of us don't have the context of who we are in the United States and what we built, what we can be proud of, even though we have been oppressed, but we survived it, right? And not only just survived it, but we overcame a lot, we conquered a lot. And so once you get that information, then it's time to get locked in as far as getting locked in with organizations that are fighting for transformative change in your community. One of those things that I advocate for is, check out the ADOS Advocacy Foundation. There's a lot of beginner steps that you can take to start getting educated and how to get organized. But then, that leads into oftentimes it's like a lot of doom and gloom. So when it goes into what you asked about, like, how do you deal with that? Oftentimes it does weigh on my mental health a lot. One of the things that the Bible talks about, I want to say it's Ecclesiastes, is that, oppression will drive a wise man mad. So when you really begin to understand what it is we're faced with, there is a soberness that you just gonna have about it. There's a soberness you may not be able to shake, maybe even in this lifetime. It doesn't mean that we don't experience joy. It doesn't mean that we can't have a good time. It doesn't mean that we can't provide our families with as best of a life as we can. Because even me, at my age, I was fortunate enough to, do something like become a homeowner. A lot of my peers weren't able to do that. A lot of folks older than me weren't able to do that. So there's ways that we can enjoy this life and ensure that our families are taken care of. But at the same time, one of the things that constantly helps me is looking at my wife, looking at my kids, and seeing, thinking about some of the ailments I've had to deal with, some real weaponized white supremacy against me and my family, and understanding what were the consequences of not having an inheritance. What were the consequences of the political structure in my community? What were the consequences of not being tailored for me in order to be able to not necessarily just thrive and be on the top and be rich, but what happened when I didn't have enough to even survive? What happened when it literally took divine intervention because my government wasn't going to do it, my family was too poor to do it, and my friends couldn't do it, right? And having that reminder, it's like, listen, you gotta, and it's something I say on my show all the time, but I mean it in a spiritual sense, and I mean it even in a political sense. You got to fight for your freedom or die talking about it. And what that looks like is like, especially as men too, right? As men, husband, as a husband and a father for me, and I know the same thing for you, Marcus. That's one of the constant reminders we have to have, and one of the stances that even you take as a husband, right? We're supposed to emulate what Christ is like with the bride, and that's what he was willing to do, was even to get somebody else's freedom, in a spiritual sense, he was willing to die behind that. And that's something that we have to be willing to. All of the folks that really made revolutionary change for us as a people, they all died, whether of natural causes, and oftentimes it was very violent. And that's one of the things that too also inspires me, is that there were people that died fighting for the very thing I'm talking about right now. When Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, he wasn't just on a poor people's campaign. He was on a reparations campaign for, at the time, it was the Negro. And then post 1965, because of immigration, there's a lot of folks that say that they're black, but they're not necessarily descendants of that chattel slavery. And there's a burden that comes with that. There's a claim, a justice claim that comes with that nobody else can levy outside of us. There's a lot of people making claims, and there are some legitimate claims for justice and outcries. But if there was an oppression Olympics, most folks don't want to enter that race. Because if we were just talking about the context of America and what we've had to deal with, it's insurmountable. There's books on books on books of the things that have happened to us just since America has been a sovereign entity. And so one of those things too, And the last thing I'll share is that, especially one of the things too that keeps me grounded is making sure I maintain that relationship with God, staying humble, staying at the foot of the throne, and having a lifestyle of worship, because I've had moments where I've drifted from Him and still want to do the political work, and it's like you can kill yourself like that, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
dealing with things that heavy and not having an anchor. Like, I didn't necessarily find out about God in church. I found out about God when my mom just was reading the Ten Commandments when we was living in Tiffany Pines, and just gave me the most basic version of the gospel, and it broke me. So having that relationship with God at an early age, it's not necessarily about church when I say that to people. Although church is important and having a community is important, having leadership and teachers is important. But when you're in this type of fight, and I know even for you guys, the work that you do, having a relationship with God is vital, because y'all are taking on stuff that's heavy. Y'all listen to stuff that's heavy. I know, Marcus, I've come to a couple of your events, and just the work, the incredible work that you're doing with a lot of kids that have been through hell on earth, and you are showing them light in that way. And like, yeah, so that's one of the things that keeps me grounded.
For sure. I love that, man. One, I appreciate the flowers sincerely, but you talked a little bit about like the grit and grind that comes with being a martyr. Like,
Yeah.
that's, man, Lily, bro, one of my prayers is asking God to leverage me as a vessel. And I know what comes with that. I know that that is beyond heavy. Again, not to the extent what these other legends and OGs have endured by any means, but that is a
Right.
task with itself. But I love how you referred to the family keeping you grounded. And again, baby girl, boy, wait till baby girl
Yes,
comes.
sir. Yes,
I'm
sir.
excited for that. That's gonna
Absolutely.
be a whole nother element. But
Yeah.
I admire the black man across the board because, again, to your point, man, we have endured so much, we have seen so much, and even right now in today's current time, they're trying to hide and take things out of play because it's so there's a monstrosity, right? That's the only reason,
Yeah.
and there's no way to avoid it by any shape or form. But again, continue. We do continue to endure through it all. So again, I love that. That is beyond beautiful. But you talk a lot about the plight that comes from us, but I know you also just took a trip to Israel not too long ago, and you saw a whole nother form of plight as well. I would love to talk a little bit about that experience and how that has helped shape you, right? Having the American perspective, but
Yeah.
now being boots on ground, seeing it from their perspective as well.
So what's crazy is, so that trip, it was a little while back, but I took that trip in 2017, right? And I was 17. I actually was taking a gap year, but I went to went to Israel for school. Shout out to the University of Ben Gurion. Went out there to study Hebrew, Israeli culture. And so overall, it was a really dope experience. The Israeli people, they're pretty cool, depending on, who you're interacting with. But I didn't get the average experience when I went over there. Because oftentimes when you hear people that go, they're usually going like with a church group, or they're going with like some sort of tour group. And I went there as just a student that wasn't even living necessarily in the most popular areas. Like, I lived in Beersheba, which is in the south. Or sometimes you'll see it in the Bible spelled Beersheba, is where Jacob dug his well. All of the patriarchs came through that area. It's also literally in the middle of the desert. So I spent almost 2 months like in the desert. And it was amazing. But one of the things that happened when we out there is that because of the untainted experience I was able to get, in terms of, I didn't have somebody like, hey, I'm gonna show you here and I'm gonna show you there, in terms of, I need you to see this so you understand what Israel is. It was just, I'm just around what it is to be Israeli.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
around the locals. I'm tech. So in Israel, technically the drinking age is 16, but to buy it you got to be 18.
Yeah.
But I'm sneaking in the pubs. I'm going with my friends. They go in to smoke hookah and stuff. So like, is this some different kind of freedom, right? So I'm going from community college, and I still got to go home at night. I am on the other side of the planet. I don't got to tell my parents nothing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm kicking it. But even then, I had my own convictions, and it even surprised myself that my faith was as strong as I thought it would be. So there's just certain things I didn't do. But while I was there, one of the specific things that I asked for was, God, I want your perspective on what's happening over here in this space. And the things that he had to say and show me were not the things that everybody kept saying was happening. And as I began to go around the country and meet different people, and although there were some nice folks, what I found was, number one, the folks I could not get along with for the life of me were the more religious Jews. Those are the ones that I could not get along with. And then the ones that were a little bit more conservative in their beliefs, or more secular, got a little along better with them. But the folks I really got along with were the Arabs.
Okay.
Now, prior to going over there, like I said, I'm around a lot of right-wing conservative types. So they were telling me, like, nah, you should be scared of them. Like, if they see you and they know that you worship the God of Israel, they're gonna blow you up. They're gonna stab you. They're gonna, like, it was like that. And I got over there, and they were the first people to offer me a meal. When I got over there, like, they was checking on me and making sure I got home to my dorm safe. They were the people that were, having conversations with me about, what it meant to be an American and their perspectives on America, but also, and this is the interesting part, having the unique perspective of an American descendant of slavery, because they don't even look at me the same. And I'm showing them to not even look at me the same as a white American, because there's a lot of stuff that, because we're at a university, so there's folks from all around the world coming there, because it's like a world-renowned university. Their desert agriculture program is like insane. So I'm meeting all these students, meeting folks from India, meeting folks from here, and here, and I'm giving them the unique perspective of somebody that was dragged to a country against their will. And nobody else has that story. Nobody else has that type of lineage. And interestingly enough, while I'm out there, and I'll never forget it, this was just such a stark reminder of what it meant to be us in this country. I was sitting in the little lounge one day. One of the girls came in, and at that point, I wasn't even paying attention to the news back home. One of the girls comes in, and we're having a conversation about racism. I'm just sitting there talking, but all the white folks, they doing their thing. And they're like, well, it's not that bad anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's all good. One of the girls comes in. She was like, hey, do y'all know what's going on at home? I was like, nah, I ain't checked my phone all day. She said, there's a Klan rally in Charlottesville. It's the big one that happened in 2017. And I'm like borderline in tears, but also I'm like, yeah, that's what happens. And people are like shocked, and they're like, wait, what happened? And I'm like, yeah, this is what we got to deal with. You see that? I couldn't have planned it more perfectly. So there was an understanding I even had with other people while I was over there. And also too, like, I want people to make sure, don't get it twisted, because I know there's a lot of conflict going on right now. The nation state of Israel, right, the government, is not the same thing as the Jewish people. I need people to understand that. There's a very dangerous conflation people are making, because folks like to put their own interpretations on the Bible. And because of that has caused a lot of harm. There are folks that are supposedly Bible believers that are like cheering on genocide. And I mean, like not to get too graphic, like I know folks that are ministers that are showing the corpses of Palestinian children on their Facebook and cheering it on and saying, I hope more of these dogs die. Like, this is what this mentality creates, right? And it's a sickness. It's a sickness. And this is what happens when you choose to believe in your own agenda instead of what God says about certain matters, what God says about certain things. And then understanding, why would somebody have a certain agenda, right? A lot of folk, just like quick little Bible tidbit. A lot of folks, we talk about the Jews a lot. The Jews are one tribe. God cared about, it was a 12 tribe family, right? With millions and millions of people that got scattered all around the world. Jews, or Judah, is one tribe. You had Asher, you got Issachar, you got Benjamin, you got all the different ones. Levi. Moses is not a Jew. He was a Levite, right? But so when you think about those things, right, why has all the attention been focused in on this particular group of people, as if there aren't other people that are equally as important? The way that America looks at it, right? We know that there's a chosen people. I'm not going to debate what's in the word, but as far as what we've done with this little piece of land that's this big over there, that got this military, got these things that are happening, things that we're watching. Yeah. So the perspective that I have on it is like, even too, the more that I learned, like one of my roommates I was staying with was in the IDF. So even having his perspective and the things that he has seen and experienced, like, a lot of folks don't even know enough to even really commentate on that, right? And the things that they decide to cheer on is very dangerous. And oftentimes, depending on who you are in America, folks are using your footage, folks are using your Facebook posts, and they are showing it to their children. And there's another generation that is going to come up and be ready to, because I would too. If I know there's people cheering on my genocide or cheering on, my mom just got blown up or half my family's gone, and you clapping it up in the name of Jesus, like there's some serious problems being created with that.
No, 100%. Well, one, I appreciate the perspective. I don't think people take time to take their pride and their tainted nationalist hat off, right? To be able to really analyze some of these things. So I really like that. I think that's an eye opener for a lot of people. And to your point, sometimes we got to put ourselves in their shoes as well, too, right? I analyze Hitler, right? People hate Hitler, but if you were from his country, you would have loved him and all the medals that he won for his country and everything in which you would have done as well. It's all about perspective. The same people who we have as these highlighted heroes, the people who drop bombs on Japan, right? And probably don't like them. Things of that nature as well too. So I appreciate you opening it up and giving more context there. But I know we have had a very deep dive conversation that has talked about a lot of different pieces. You dropped a lot of bombs across the board, but I am excited to pivot to our growth segment here, James. So James, what did our last guest leave for us, man, as we go ahead and pick your brain, Christian? So if you don't know, ask. If you do not see it, become it, man. Our OG Carl, I know you know Carl, left this message
Come on,
for
man.
us.
That's the OG, man. Yes, sir.
And I actually heard you speak about something similar to this a little bit earlier, but I want to get your perspective on this and give us a little bit of insight there.
Yeah, I mean this is it's almost like a life creed that I live by. One of the things I got in trouble for a lot was asking too many questions. Just from the time I was a kid, even growing up, because I just have to understand, and I'm not gonna act like I know if I don't. So many of classes I had people running late to other stuff because I'm sorry, I know that you did this 5 times. Do it 6, and I might get it. And then even the part about if you don't see it, become it. Like and that's even something that I've heard Mr. Carl talk about, and his journey, and even for me, just like that's one of the things with the show. It was just like I was tired of I'm hearing about certain things, and I'm like, why don't they talk about this, or why don't they talk about that, or why don't they do it from this perspective? Why do I keep hearing it like this? And it just like felt like one of those things that God kept pushing me, like. Yeah, the hole is Christian size. Like, why you think I did it like this? Like, this is like there's a reason you feel like that. So I think even for just anybody, like number one is like and I think it's great that it's put there like that, because it's like do this in order. Have the humility to ask first, because oftentimes you're gonna claim that you don't see something you never even asked. Yep. You're willing to start stepping on people's toes, and I'm gonna be the first so and so. Like, nah, there's an OG that's been doing it for like over a decade. Like, you could have came up under him, but you didn't have the humility to ask. So you just think that you see everything. And then number 2 is be cool with asking, but then get active and get in your community and see what you see. See what you see. Get out of your comfort zone and do kind of like what Moses did. Like, yeah, I grew up in the palace, but I know my people are over here. Let me go down to Goshen and see for myself. They could have told me, right? He's got access to all the people, all the so-called media that they had at that time. Like, I could find out in other ways, but let me put my eyes on it. Let me, like you brothers do, let me put my eyes on the situation and really touch these kids' lives. Like, you could do it over Zoom. You could do it, but no, y'all really like, I love the story you had about ordering the pizza. Like you really get these kids pizza. And so they can break bread with you, and they're learning things and all these other things. So like that's really what that means to me.
Mm-hmm. You talked about it, humility, initiative, right, and hustle. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I love it, and I'm glad you're actually connected with Carl. So I know that resonates a little bit more with you too. But what segment do you have for us, right? Or what element can you add to the growth segment that really stands out to you and has helped empower you to be the phenomenal young man you've grown to be as well?
It's crazy you say that. So it's like a 2-parter. Number 1 is, and this is something I'm actively working on. Stop being scared. I think oftentimes, and we don't always really identify the dangers that fear has. One of the things that the Bible talks about is that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And one of the things I've struggled with, early on in my life, and even now in a lot of ways, dealing with anxiety from different things. And that's also one of the strengths that I'm learning to have, is like, stop being scared to be able to address certain things. Stop being scared to be wrong. Stop being scared that you're not prepared, or having what folks call imposter syndrome. Like, oftentimes, like, if God doesn't give you more than you can bear, then that means you was prepared for it, right? So if you can't do it brave, do it scared, but get it done though. And even learn in my own life certain times that when I'm in an anxious mindset, that has caused a lot of bad decisions. It's caused some disobedience. It's caused putting myself in situations where my wife looking at me a little sideways, like, "Hey man, I know thought you was the captain of the boat. Like, what we doing here, right?" So there's that, and honestly, like really really seek God in what you do. And I hear people say this a lot, but when I say that, I mean, like, in whatever avenue of life, do that. We often equate like worship with like a really cool service before church and the music is going. Worship is a lifestyle. So when you're doing stuff in politics, when you're doing your job, when you're doing whatever it is that you do, make sure that you've submitted that first to the one true God, right? The creator of the universe, of heaven and earth. Because that is one of the things that has saved me so much. Because there's a lot of stuff I could get into. There's a lot of ways that, and folks I could have connected with, that maybe my profile would have boosted. Maybe I would have had access to more money and a lot of other things. But when you submit your plans to the Lord, sometimes him telling you no is the biggest blessing you might receive. Sometimes him telling you no isn't even no permanently. It's just, you not ready now. No for right now. And having the humility, like, there's times like I would love to go back and be an entrepreneur, but there's things I'm learning in my 9 to 5 right now that would make me a much more effective entrepreneur. And I've had to be cool with, for a couple of years being told, like, you growing a lot, you doing great. Not yet though. Not yet. You getting there though. And being cool with, like, all right, learning to love correction, learning to love to learn. And that's been a big thing for me. And that's been the driving force behind the way I look at politics. The driving force behind the way that I look at family, even for myself, just learning how to, like, put that before God. Like, you think you know the answer for that, but you're only going off of what you've seen. There might be a better way. And when I've had moments of doing that, I mean, life, it's always life that comes out of that. Life in relationships, life in a lot of different ways. And that word is living and active. So I can't deny its effectiveness, in my life and the lives I've seen in others, and folks that may not necessarily believe, but it's happening anyway.
You gonna learn today.
Man, we appreciate you, Christian, man, for coming through and really just giving some dope game, because a lot of what you talked about, like, many people may have heard in passing, but, like, I love the way that you were able to articulate it in a way that it was easily digestible. Marcus knows I talk about this all the time. It's almost like mastery level, but you humble enough to say you don't know anything. So I appreciate that. But lastly, as we close out, where can our listeners find you? If they want to tap in with the podcast, where's the podcast? And then also, where are you on social media and things like that?
Yeah. So as of right now, we're working on putting it on other platforms, so like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But for right now, you can find me on YouTube, BereanTalk. Right now, it might accidentally be 2 channels on there. The other one's getting shut down. So we getting some footage moved over, and so yeah, you can find me there. Find some of the old interviews I've done with politicians. I've even done some law enforcement. Even down to just the solo dolo, just me sharing my thoughts. As far as social media is concerned, you can find me on Facebook, BereanTalk. And then you can also check out my Twitter or X, Instagram, and even TikTok. It's Chris Nick, ChrisNick 1711. And yeah, I share a lot of information, articles, just my thoughts on certain things. And I love interacting with folks, love connecting with folks, finding ways to collaborate with brothers like yourself. So, y'all be looking forward to it because the Berean Talk family, we're gonna have the fellas through, man. We're gonna have the conversation.
For sure.
And but yeah, that's where you can find me. And then even also too, I'll drop another plug even for the ADOS Advocacy Foundation, the folks that are doing wonderful work there. They have about 11 chapters set up for those that are in North Carolina. There is a North Carolina chapter that you can join. They're doing a lot of wonderful advocacy work from the community level all the way to the state, and even collaborating with the national team. And if you just want to find out more information about it, you can go to more info at ados.org. And just learn more, a lot more in-depth information and things that I didn't even explain that well about what we're dealing with, ways that we can fight against it, and in order to make a better world for us and our children's children.
For sure. Let's grow together, family. It's been another amazing episode, man. Shout out to y'all for tapping in. Until next time, peace out.